So there's this question that comes up in our comments, and it's coming up quite often. And it seems to be the question of, can I buy land in a country on the continent of Africa? And so we're going to talk about that question. I know it encompasses pretty much everyone, business owners, entrepreneurs, and people who may be digital nomads, and people who are retired. So let's look at that question. My initial first thought is, let's examine the question you're asking. What I mean by that is sometimes we ask the wrong question and we don't realize we're asking the wrong question. And I refuse to be led about like our former dog, Jada, a boxer. Before she was trained, she would pull on the leash and pull me this way and that way, if you guys remember that.
Yeah, me too.
And sometimes these questions are like that, and there's this obligation to answer in the context. But I'm saying, no, the best question to ask is always, what question should I ask you? That's a tip. That'll take you a long ways. Okay, so I'm saying that's the wrong question. And now we're going to delve into why we think that you may have asked the wrong question. I know that one thing that comes to my mind is there's this scripture. It's in Proverbs chapter 24, verse 27. And literally the Bible is giving you guidance on how to go about this. It says, to prepare your work without, make it fit or ready in the field.
Yes.
Afterwards, build your house.
Yes.
Let me break that down for you. So when you prepare your work without, that doesn't just mean work. That's the first thing. It could mean, do I like the neighborhood? Do I like the culture?
Exactly.
Now, realize the Bible's written in an agricultural society. So if you're preparing your work without, and I'm from the Midwest, so if you have a field of soybeans that's good for soybeans, it may not be good for corn. So you want to make sure that you can grow the crops that you're good at on the land before you go trying to build this house. I hope that was clear. You want to make sure that that area is able to sustain you.
Yes, make sure the area is ready for you. Those are good things you listed, like the culture, language. Where are you going to shop? Where are you going to live? Those are just a few things that immediately came to mind for me.
Yeah, and for me, it's basically what comes to me of what we're saying is scouting trips. Like,
Yes.
get a lay of the land, Joshua style. I mean, you're not coming to do anything like that, but it's like to see where you're going to do all the things you're listing, like the shopping, the environment,
School.
Socially, is it, East Africa can be a bit more quiet, whereas West Africa is a bit more jumping, what do you like before you go and try to buy land or buy a house? These are things to consider.
Yeah, all of those things are really good. I think the areas also I'm thinking of is that I think a lot of times when we're thinking of moving, we think of where we are at that moment. Say if a lot of you are in the States, you're thinking of how maybe you've moved from, even if just from one city to the next or from one state to a state, and you may not have to find out, okay, if I'm going to this other state and I'm getting this house or whatever, or I'm going to rent something, I just do what I always do. But when you're coming to another country, it's not the same. You have to find out, okay, if I'm coming, I probably need to find someone like a lawyer or someone that could help me to know the culture, because I might be going to a particular area and I don't know if this land is owned by one person or it's a whole lot of family members. So it's a different way that you do things in Africa, if that's where you're coming, than maybe where you are. So those are things that you really want to think about. And even going back to when he said the scripture, the first word was prepare. It's like, I hear a lot of people saying they want to come, but they're not thinking, oh, there's things I need to do before I get there. So you want to really think about those things before you get there. That's why the scouting trip is good and all those other things, and the renting would be excellent because you're not sure of the area that you're going to be in.
Yeah, so I'm going to touch on some of the things that she was saying. in a little bit more in the weeds. So she gave you the idea of going to an attorney
Yep.
and finding out who owns the land, because in many countries in Africa there may be multiple members of the family that own this property, and you got okay from just one or two or three. Then there's the fact that you might have to go to a local chief, sharehouse, or whatever, and that's separate of then you needing to go to a government official. And it may be in someone's best interest
Yeah.
to tell you an early yes, when really theirs is only a stop on the way, just one of the milestones, and you think you got the complete approval to be able to do that. One other thing is she talked about how, well, what come to my mind is there's not necessarily any Zillow or thing like that. So meaning a localized online place where you can go find out about cribs, flats, whatever you want to call them. And you could say, but Mark, because I know I did while we were still in Los Angeles. I got online and I was looking at properties. But then when I got to Rwanda, come to find out that those were ancient listings and they were just baiting me to come to look at stuff. And so it really wasn't all that advantageous. So I think it's the way we think about things.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of a model. I think Josiah mentioned.
With the Rwanda example, we realized we had to be boots on the ground, and that worked out because then we rented a place for a year, fully furnished. It was great. We had no issues. But the model that comes to mind, and family chime in anymore if you need to, is just that most of our audience is American, like we are, and so it's okay. You're just used to projecting your culture onto another place. Usually, you think that's language. That can get into property development and real estate as well. You're used to, what did you say, Dad? Zillow and Remax and things. It's not that most of the
comps.
And say again?
Comps.
And comps. And so you're just simply used to a mode of business and a mode of searching real estate that you will very well have to tweak dramatically when you come to Africa or just to a new country. That's why, like you were saying, DB, scouting trips are so important. So is that you just do a scouting trip, have your list of, okay, I'm gonna look into business, entrepreneurship, real estate as it's done in Ghana, as it's done in Tanzania, South Africa, Portugal, wherever you wanna go. Just, you can have your ideas, but do the research ahead of time, even of yourself. Okay, I want to look into the schools. I want to look into property development. That's really what we're talking about. And go there to find out who's the most trustworthy legal representation. How do they set that thing up for Airbnb, for permanent residency, for apartments, for fully furnished versus, I guess they just call it furnished for yourself or whatever the opposite is. Those are things you need to think about. Put away the American model and embrace what the new model will look like, so is that you can just figure out how do they do real estate where you want to go.
Yeah, you want to be really flexible, so flexible that you how do I put this? 90% of people move when from country to country when they come here to the continent of Africa. We moved. We have friends who moved. We have friends who didn't move, but it's not such a stationary thing. Just as I was talking about the model, the mindset really that you're gonna have to change, because this is a huge change, moving to another country, not a westernized country at that. And so you have to leave behind what you're used to in terms of the Zilla and everything like that. You want to be flexible. You want to rent furnished places. You want to do that research to get used to what it's like living abroad here.
Yeah, there's also, I mentioned the residency. For your consideration, you do not have to homestead immediately. We mentioned we went to Rwanda. That was the first place we went to when we moved in 2021. We rented for a whole year someplace, a fully furnished house. Not just Rwanda, but also here in Zanzibar as well. We have rented fully furnished wherever we went. That's a great option. We weren't trying to be looking for too many things or other things we designed and stuff. There's also the point of the research mom and dad set up with looking into the country first, what Daniel was saying as well, because a lot of us also when you're thinking of land, you're also thinking of oftentimes a permanent residence. And everyone's situation is different. We were one place, then we moved someplace else. When you're in America, sometimes you're moving, 5 to 11 times or so. We moved all over PG County, Maryland, then we moved to Los Angeles, now we're in East Africa. The same thing, depending on your situation, may very well happen where you start off one place, probably a soft landing. Depending on your quality of life, you might be interested in school, you might be interested in investment like we were, that inspired us to move elsewhere. And so really look into residencies versus citizenship. Near as we can tell, residency is also faster to get. There are different types of residency permits and visas for student, for family, for digital nomad, whereas it sounds like generally with citizenship in an African country or otherwise, you have to stay someplace sometimes for 5 to 10 years at a time, which is cool if you want to do that, but see, you still got to get a residency for that anyway, so you still have to do what I said. So consider that, so that your balloon isn't popped like, oh, I can't get citizenship, but you can still get residency someplace and bounce around as you're scouting out places.
And again, I want to remind you, 90% of people who move here do not stay in the same place. I'm going to say that again because it's so critical, because we keep thinking about moving here and it's just one spot, it's one land, one stationary thing, and you're still bringing that mindset over from the West, from America, where a place can look the same in the East Coast and in the Midwest. We were looking at some video the other day. I was like, wow, the shopping complex looks exactly the same as this place in the East Coast. We live on a continent, in a country with over 50 something, I don't remember the exact number, countries, plural. The cultures are different. The people, they're all different. And that is a lot to take in.
So to conclude it, to wrap this thing up, I guess as my mother would say, don't put the cart before the horse. And by that, what we mean is you're asking a question that's out of time. And it's not in the right season to ask that question yet. Work on getting your mind shift together. Work on the scouting trip. Work on learning the culture where you're going. Work on shifting from homesteading mindset to I'm gonna do scouting trips and understand things like that. And give yourself time. They already told you what could be an option. It was for a couple of years that we rented a fully furnished place. And we've been on the continent more than 3 years now. And yes, we do own multiple properties, but we gave it time to work itself out.
Don't rush. And lastly, before we go, we cover some of these things in our upcoming January workshop, How to Move Abroad in 3 Easy Steps, where we help you develop your focused goal to move to Africa or anywhere. They're evergreen travel strategies, but our experience is in Africa, if you couldn't tell. Develop your focused goal, research, and a budget, because cost of living, real estate, things like that, you gotta know. You can learn some of this stuff before you go out. So, and this is a starter workshop coming in January, How to Move Abroad in 3 Easy Steps. So if you're interested in learning more about that, check the link in the description and we'll see you there. Peace.
Quick advice, look up visa-free countries throughout the world. If you want to come to Africa, you can do that. The world is your oyster. Look up visa-free countries for Americans, because there are benefits to being American if you are American, or if you are British or English or Western or something. Look at how heavy, and heavy is a good term, I think, not the official term, but look how heavy your passport is. See what countries you can go to visa-free. In the Bahamas, last I checked, Americans can stay in the Bahamas visa-free for like 200 days. That's like, what, 2/3 of the year or something? That's a long time. That's plenty of time to plan and get your things together. Look up least corrupt countries in the Global Peace Index. That could be relative, that could just be the whole world. That could be relative to Africa, again, if that's where you want to go, or the Caribbean or something. Look up all the things that matter to you. Top shelf health, the countries with the best health care. Look up the world's best, travel insurance, digital nomad insurance, health insurance. Look up the places, if you're retirement age or if you're retired, look up all the places that are voted as the best for retirees to go to. The best for families, the best absolutely for Black people. I didn't even need to say that one, but there you go. Look up those things, and if you need help, that's right. We just put out a free guide. It's like 5 pages or something like that. Look in the description of this video. There's also other goodies in there as well, free downloads and travel resources based on my family's experience. We've been living abroad for 2.5 years now. And so if you need some help with research to find all the things I mentioned, like best places to retire to, least corrupt countries, least corrupt African countries, best places for, safest places for Black people to go to, etc., you can find that in our epic expat research guide. It's linked in the description of this video.